To Digital Math Mondays with Louie and Ryan. So we are excited to be joining you for week 2 of this webinar type series where you guys can ask us questions via social media or however you get in touch with any of our text help support folks out there, whether it be sales related people or you're writing into our Twitter account, if you will. So we have again collaborated with marketing and put together a small amount of questions for today, and we have half an hour to kind of dive into those sessions. And we are extremely excited to be with you again. So again, my name is Louis Shanafelt, and Ryan, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Ryan. I'm the lead developer on EquatIO. So I'm going to be taking everybody through the new features, new technical things, and new fun stuff that EquatIO has to offer over the course of the next half an hour or so.
Awesome. So, and my name again is Louis Shanafelt. I am the product manager / evangelist. So a lot of you can reach out to Ryan and I, and we're more than happy to jump into a Twitter discussion with you or to have you kind of sending your questions the way some of you have been doing it. So let's kind of jump in and get started. I'm going to go over the first question here, and hopefully, Ryan, if you can kind of, I know you're probably looking ahead at question number 2 here, but this one's a little bit, it's layered. It's probably our shortest question, but I tried to kind of put something together to hopefully help users understand how we can do peer-to-peer learning and remote learning. And it kind of goes in line with question number 3. So maybe we can bounce some ideas off each other for 1 and 3 here. But the first question says, how can you have peer-to-peer learning while remote learning? So I thought of this in 2 different scenarios, like peer-to-peer as in student to student, but we could also say peer-to-peer as in how can teachers create resources and kind of share those resources with other teachers and collaborate that way. And kind of our collaborate, question goes in line with question number 3 here. So these will kind of fall in line with one another, but we'll try and piggyback some ideas off one another here, Ryan. But what I did is I had a scenario that I wanted to share with you. So I will try and describe this, and then Ryan will tell me if I'm just confusing every viewer out there, hopefully.
I'm very easily confused, Louis, so I'm not a good benchmark to go by.
Okay, so what I tried to do for everybody is I am using 2 different logins because what I wanted to do is try and replicate, let's say, the remote learning environment where you have student A and student B working in 2 different places here. So I will kind of go over this here. This right here is an EquatIO Google account that I created because I have a Google certification training under my belt. I'm able to create out of my own training domain a user ID. And what I've done is I created an EquatIO demo account as a student. And you'll see I'm logged in as a student. And then what I'm also going to show you is that Louis, the text help employee, which really we'll just call student B, is also logged into this same document over here on the right. So here you have student B, which is Louis, me from text help, and Louis logged into the Google account. And then you can see that student A, which is my EquatIO demo account, which is this guy here, is logged into the same Google Doc. So what I wanted to do is kind of split my screen and say, we have student A on the left and we have student B on the right. And what I wanted to kind of replicate here for everybody today is how we can do peer-to-peer learning with this remote learning happening. And one scenario, in this scenario, I should say, the reason why I'm showing it to you this way is because currently, you cannot collaborate as a student in the same math space with another student. In other words, when I go to my EquatIO math space dashboard, there isn't a way for 2 people to be working in the same math space and viewing collaboratively what's happening. So what I thought I'd do is show this demo here. So on the left, we have student A who's looking at this circle in a Google Doc. And what I wanted to show is, even though Google obviously has a multitude of collaborative tools in it, we can still use EquatIO items inside of the G Suite to collaborate and work with peer-to-peer learning in this remote learning environment. So what I did is I created a math space item on the left, and I, as student A, I'm going to pull this into EquatIO. So I'm going to open up the EquatIO toolbar. I'm going to select the math space. We will pretend, for example, that student B made this circle and student A wants to change something to this circle. So I, as student A, can click on the circle and select Insert Math Space. So I can pull student B's work into a math space, and you will see here that what I can do is I can change or edit the math space by, I can put another circle in, for example, and maybe student A wants to add something like a formula here. So the area of a circle, let's say, actually, I forgot, I think, Ryan, here to turn on. Uh-oh. Yeah. So I was going to type in here, and I can do it here. I can use the text tool. Hopefully you guys are all aware of our text tool here. A is going to be equal to pi r squared, which I would have a hard time showing here under this free account. But if I had pi r and then squared, I could insert this. So with 2 EquatIO licenses, I could insert this into my math space, and then watch what happens when I go and insert this. It's going to replace what I did from student A, and it'll update on the right side for student B. In my opinion, I mean, this is just one way to do it, but what I think would probably be best is just use the Google Doc as that collaborative tool. So for example, on student B's side, if they look at what student A has done, they can just move their cursor and go into math space and make their own items. So what I would do here in this example, and this is going to have the full premium access here, I'm going to select the area of a circle. I can then insert that math, and I can come over here and draw another circle, and watch how we can collaborate on the same Google Doc, and the students would be able to work together in this peer-to-peer learning. So notice how when I scroll down on student A, I can see what student B created. So this would be one way that students could work in math space and work together. And what they're doing is they're using this Google Doc as that collaborative tool. The other thing that I wanted to show here before I kick it to question number 2 for Ryan is I would use the Google Suite as that collaborative peer-to-peer learning tool. But what I also think is really great to show here, I'm going to maximize my screen. And what I can do from a peer-to-peer, as in, because when I think of peer-to-peer and I'm looking at this from a teacher perspective, what if I, as the teacher, created something for, let's say, 5th grade math, and I created some coordinate planes with some dots for students to plot? Watch how we can take the share button, and I can share this with my colleague or my peer, and I can copy that. And what I can do is I'm going to go open that other Google account again, and I am going to go and paste that link in right here. And this is a really, really great way to share things with your peers, as in your colleagues. And I can see here that now that the teacher that I've shared this with is getting this little dialog box that's saying, hey, thanks for sharing this math space. I can tell the link you're using is a shared math space, and I can now import this right into my dashboard. So I clicked on Save Now. I can then return to that EquatIO dashboard, and then look, this second account that I just shared this with, this EquatIO demo account, now has this in their spaces, which they can then open this and immediately go and share this with colleagues, or they can share it with other colleagues, or they can share it with their students. Anything to add to that, Ryan, that you can think of?
I think it's really interesting actually using the Google Doc for the peer-to-peer sharing and collaboration. As you say, we could put things into MathSpace to allow users to collaborate, but Google Docs already has that rich environment where you can leave comments, you know, on students' work. You can say, hey, you know, this is really great, or maybe this is the right formula instead. If you're using our Read and Write application, obviously you can leave voice notes as well, so you can explain your working. You drop in a MathSpace in there, explain your working, leave a comment, exactly like that as well. So I think it's a really, really good environment to get real-time communication, especially with 2 remote, either student teacher or student. I think it's a really, really good use of MathSpace and also the EquatIO toolbar too.
Yeah, perfect. So like Ryan was saying here, we could just use this Google Suite because we don't, it's not that we don't feel like it's necessary to collaborate directly within EquatIO. It's just that Google already provides that collaborative tool. So what Ryan was suggesting is maybe clicking on that MathSpace, and you from a peer-to-peer perspective can leave comments on a MathSpace, or you can provide that peer feedback, which also is an extremely useful tool from a classroom perspective. Teachers obviously don't have to be the only ones helping others, and students could help with that peer-to-peer feedback. So we can use that Google Suite. So great thought, Ryan. I appreciate you jumping in there. I'm going to jump to question number 2 and read this for Ryan as he gets his computer queued up and we switch to his screen. And that is, Ryan, how can we use EquatIO and Read&Write within Khan Academy?
Yeah, absolutely. So it should be said as well, I'm a huge fan of Khan Academy. I love it. I think it's a really good resource. And whenever we are building EquatIO as well, it's one of the tools that I always strive to use, because like I've mentioned on here before, I am not a very good, I'm not a math guy. I'm not very good at math. So if I ever want to learn anything about math, I go straight to Khan Academy. So I'm very familiar with how to use it and how to use it with EquatIO as well. I think the question was actually how to use it with EquatIO and Read&Write. So there's, Read&Write has its good parts and EquatIO has its good parts, and they're very specific tools for different things, but they work very, very well together inside Khan Academy. So I have Khan Academy on my screen, and I've got one of my classes here, and I was just going to create an assignment. So if I click on my identify equations, expressions, and inequalities, it should hopefully, ask me to practice. Let's go. So we're in an assessment environment, and a student needs to know or needs some assistive tools to try and help them read that content that's on the screen. On my screen, the font's actually quite small, and the letters are quite bold as well, so they can be very difficult to read. So that's where Read&Write comes in, very helpful. If I click on my Read&Write icon on the top right-hand corner, I get the full Read&Write toolbar. Now, because Khan Academy is like so involved, there's elements pop up on the screen all over the place. What I like to use for Read&Write is the hover speech tool. If I click on the hover speech, that allows me just to point at the sentence that I want read out, and it will then highlight the sentence and read it out loud using our text-to-speech tools. So we'll read out which of the following phrases are equations. The other thing as well is that it does highlight math, but it doesn't really read out the math as you would expect a math equation to be read out. It would read, 4x3 instead of, 4x cubed. That's where EquatIO comes in. EquatIO understands math, and it understands how to, say those things out loud. And also, you've probably, if you already have EquatIO installed, you've probably been using EquatIO for text-to-speech in maybe other languages, Spanish, French, English, and so on. So I obviously have my EquatIO set up for English, because my Spanish, as you can probably tell, isn't great either. So to use EquatIO then inside Khan Academy, again, you click on the EquatIO button in the top right-hand corner of the screen, and you get this sort of a trimmed down version of EquatIO specifically for use within websites. And we've got two tools on this toolbar. One of them is the discoverability, which is a little what I like to call magic button, that whenever you click on it, it goes and looks through your current screen to see if it can find any math. So it's identified b equals 9 as a piece of math, and 7 plus 19 equals 26 as a piece of math. And you can then click on each one of those individually and read it aloud. So if I click on the capture math button, internet's obviously a little bit slow today. So then it captures that math, and it then makes it accessible. It immediately starts to read it out as well. So 7 plus 19 equals 26. And again, it'll read it out in your own user preferences too. So whatever language you speak or you've got set up in EquatIO, it'll read the equation out as well. So if you see as well, question A there, it didn't quite capture that, right? That happens sometimes, and if it can't, pinpoint that it's a math equation or it doesn't understand it. So we can actually use our second tool up here, the screenshot reader. The screenshot reader is very useful if Equatio can't find math for you. If the magic bit doesn't work to its full magic potential, you can use the screenshot reader to click on that and then drag a rectangle across the math that you want read aloud, and it'll do that exact same process again. So it's read out 4x cubed to me, so because it understands the math. And the other thing I like about this as well is that it's actually really good quality too. You know, it's zoomed in, it's magnified it, it's made it a lot easier to read. So if you have students with visual impairments, it really helps make the math an awful lot clearer for them. And that's pretty much how I would use EquatIO and Read&Write in Khan.
Yeah, you know what? You know what's great too. I'll piggyback on what you were saying, Ryan. Is you know, we couldn't hear the actual voice of the math being played back, but that's okay, because you notice when that capture box started to play that math, Ryan was able to hit that stop key. And you know what's really great about this is you have a lot of students that obviously struggle with their math and their science classes, and then when you know they don't like asking, hey, can you repeat that again? So Ryan can push that play button to have that math, you know, repurposed and replayed as many times as he needs for his own understanding. So he wouldn't need a teacher or be able to have to raise his hand, so to speak. And kids, you know, I've been in the classroom for many, many years, and kids are embarrassed. They'd rather sit there and not raise their hand and have something read back or have to ask for that additional help. And the great thing about that playback tool is you can have kids, you know, use headphones or a headset and have that read as many times as they potentially need. So. Let's see here. Thank you, Ryan. So question 3 here, and some of this, like I said from the beginning, is going to piggyback off 1, and maybe, you know, we'll try and get Ryan to maybe chime in here to see if he's got any other ideas for me. But the third question talks about the digital shareable whiteboard and what's out there for students and teachers to use. And in particular here, it says a digital shareable whiteboard out there that allows you to control which student has access at a particular time. And, you know, we can go and we can focus on math space, and that's kind of where I keep going. And I've jokingly told Ryan, you know, off of our little TV show here, so to speak, you know, if I ever, you know, left text help and had to go back in the classroom and teach math, I'd said, you know, the one thing that I would absolutely adopt in my classroom for my students is math space. I absolutely love math space, and I know that, you know, the recommendations and things we hear from folks is, you know, all the different potential that MathSpace has. So now that you can see back on my screen here, you know, obviously you could consider your Google Doc, you know, a whiteboard if you want, and you can have students collaborate here, like we mentioned from the get-go, and use some of those commenting features. So if I open EquatIO here and I think to myself, you know, if I go to create some math here and I just write a general expression like 3x squared plus 2y cubed equals 14, let's say, and I go and insert that. So we're looking for digital collaborative whiteboards. And, you know, if I go to start solving this problem, for example, and I go and hit the enter key, notice how we have all the alignment buttons and all the different things that we've put into our user interface here. And let's say I go and subtract, let's say 3x squared from both sides, and I can space over and type that in again. And then let's say I go and insert this, and this is where I could go, and I didn't have that selected, so we'll go back here. This is where you could have a collaborative whiteboard if you thought of a Google Doc as a whiteboard, and I can create math here, and then I can invite Ryan, let's say, to this document, right? And Ryan could jump in here and leave comments. He can help me. This goes back to our peer-to-peer learning environment. We also could jump into a math space. So I can go to equatio.texthelp.com. I can select a new space. And I really like to tell people this really is my collaborative whiteboard. This is kind of would be my focus, but I just wanted to point out you can make those math items in docs, in sheets, in slides. Another kind of like a, you know, a hidden Google tool. I absolutely love it is Google Drawings. So you can use our product in that as well. Drawings
that's what I was going to suggest as well, Louis. You know, Drawings is like that app that nobody ever talks about that Google have.
Right.
You know, it's so powerful as well.
Oh, it's great because you can drag images around and not have some of those restrictions in using a doc. So like if I actually, let me jump over to it real quick. So drawings.google.com. Many of you may or may not be aware that this is your own, like, considered a whiteboard. And you might go, well, those got grid there. Well, you can just right click here, go to background, and you can just make it a totally blank whiteboard, if you will. So notice I'm just logged into my Google account. I went to drawings.google.com and I can pull in EquatIO here. So once I click on that extension, notice we work just seamlessly right into Google Drawings. So again, these are just some ideas that Ryan and I, that's why we're doing this little show for you all, to kind of show you all the different potential that you have within using EquatIO in this white space area. Again, I mean, my first love of EquatIO when I saw this was really this EquatIO math space whiteboard, because notice in Drawings, you don't have all the tools in the toolbar. Whereas if I jump back to math space, I get my shapes. And so that would be one advantage over using one versus the other. So I can go here and I can use any of these different things that are in math space to collaborate with students. So again, I mean, I can drop in distributions. We could have a Venn diagram and I could have, comparisons and similarities and differences between objects I'm discussing. We recently also put in here T-charts. So remember, if you start to scroll and you get kind of, maybe you get annoyed at all the things we have in shapes, but hey, we put all this stuff in for you guys. Check this out. We have a search bar here, so you can just type in something like, T-chart, and notice I can drop in a T-chart and I can put similarities and differences here. So we have all sorts of things in here. We would encourage you to go and check this out. Notice that everything that I do here can be shared with another individual. So I can share this when I'm done. I can make a copy for each person. I believe in last week's episode, if you missed that, I talked about using this and expecting student responses. So I don't want to jump back into this again. But notice how you can have people respond to your math space, or you can just make a copy and share this directly with other users, like I showed back in question number 1. So that is kind of just a summarize or a wrap up of the different whiteboard activities that are out there. And let's jump to question 4, because we're running with about 8 minutes left here. The question, Ryan, is I can't seem to find any videos that will walk me through writing chemistry equations on YouTube. Can you send me a resource? I have a chemistry teacher that would like to put formulas in a Google form, and I'm only familiar with the math components. I'd appreciate any help.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? This is a very good question, because I had difficulty trying to find these videos myself. And I'm the lead developer in EquatIO, so it doesn't speak well. But they are there, and hopefully we're going to make them a little bit more prominent with what we're going to show you next as well. So to start off, how do we write a science formula or chemistry formula in EquatIO? First thing is you need to go to your EquatIO menu and go to options, and just check that your chemistry checkbox is checked blue. For most users, that probably should be on, but just worth going in to check to see if it's on or off. Make sure that's set to blue and click save. And once you do that, then our chemistry formula will be integrated into the existing EquatIO prediction. So I actually have another document on another screen, which is going to tell me exactly how to type a chemical formula. So that's the only way I'm going to be able to do it. So if we just type in, for example, carbon, just type in carbon, and it will give me a prediction for C. Hit enter, and it'll then give me the chemical symbol for carbon. And if I then wanted to expand that out onto a full equation, say I don't have a C, I can do superscript 3, and I can do H superscript again. Now to do the superscript as well, you can either do shift and minus on your keyboard, or if you're more comfortable typing, you can do super, and I'll give you superscript, or sub for subscript, and press enter.
I was going to ask you for that keyboard shortcut, Ryan, because I know people were thinking, how's he doing that? So, but yeah, I always cheat and use the SUP and prediction, but Ryan was using that keyboard shortcut. So it's shift minus.
Shift minus, yeah, I had to look down at my keyboard there. It's more muscle memory at this stage that I know how to do that. But yeah, some people are more comfortable with the keyboard, some people are more comfortable with the prediction. So we can do also react with, which will give us the plus symbol. So now we've got react with, and we can also type in the full name, like oxygen, and then enter. And we have yields or produces as well. Both of them said different ways, obviously, depending on how you would, say the equation to somebody. Produces, and we can type in water plus carbon dioxide. Now we have a full chemical equation, which we then can click on the insert button, and it will drop that equation then into your Google Doc. At the downside, we have the words edit math and insert math everywhere, but EquatIO works equally as well with chemical physics equations, formulas, and so on and so forth. And anything you see that I've done here, you can do just as well in a Google form too. But I did mention earlier on that it was hard to find some videos.
Right.
So what we have put together is, I'm sure most people have probably seen this little hat in the bottom corner called the EquatIO Academy. And it basically is little bite-sized chunks of information on how to use EquatIO to do certain things. What we're going to do is we're going to have a full website called EquatIO Academy, where you can go and search for topics. So in this case, I searched for chemistry, and it's brought up the chemistry prediction. And for every single one of these articles, there should be either a GIF or a YouTube video recorded by your good self, Louis.
That'd be me.
Showing you then how to use the tools like chemistry prediction, handwriting, and so on and so forth. So in our EquatIO Academy, we've got a whole bunch of articles. At the top here, we can press chemistry, and I'll bring in search results, hopefully, for chemistry predictions. And then there's one there specifically for creating chemistry items in Google Forms, which is really good because that shows you both how do you create a question in Google Form with chemistry and how do you respond to it as well as a student.
I'm as much as a chemistry expert, by the way, as Ryan, which is to say, not to say a whole lot. The good thing here is that Ryan's right. I did do these articles and create these videos. And one thing I wanted to point out is Ryan and I were speaking last week, and notice if you can hover over it, Ryan, the remote learning tag. So I've tagged and went in on Friday afternoon. I didn't speak to Ryan on Friday and even tell him I did this yet, but I did go through the Academy and started to tag articles and videos that will help with remote learning. So notice when Ryan clicks on that remote learning tag, you'll see every article on the right-hand side there, Ryan. And actually, if you scroll all the way down, they all have remote learning. And then look, there's 6 pages worth of things that I thought in particular can help with chemistry items. Actually, Ryan's mouse is really close to isotopes. That was challenging. Like when I first joined TextHelp, like how do I create an isotope? And it shows you exactly, you type in nuclear notation in prediction, and it can really help users with some of those more complex chemistry items. But just like Ryan just showed you how he typed that in a Google Doc, and he did say this, but like if he was to do this in Forms, it works identically. So that's awesome. I appreciate you showing that. And especially Academy, you guys should know, I worked really hard on those Academy articles and videos. If you see anything that, anything that doesn't look right, especially if it's chemistry related, and like, I don't know who this guy is showing me these chemistry items, but I did the best I could. But sometimes we have to go in and use to kick this back off again. I love Sal Khan, and I go to Sal Khan videos just like Ryan does to kind of learn some of these more advanced things. And again, we're not necessarily content experts. We leave that up for you guys, the teachers, and then we can try and make those things work within the product to make your lives easier in the classroom for you and your students. One thing I want to, last thing we'll talk about here, and we have 1 minute left, is we had a question come in. I might have to pull this or push this to the following week, but it talks about anyone use an app that allows me to use my iPad as a touchpad for my MacBook. Thinking about smart notebook, chemistry type stuff, much easier to write it out than than using the digital format. So I can just probably speak to this more than anything else. I'll be the first to tell you, and Ryan will be excited to share this as well. We are currently working and going through a QA process right now and getting the iPad to work with MathSpace. So anything that Ryan just showed in terms of making chemistry on a MathSpace is the same thing. You know, we're going to hopefully have that roll out here very, very shortly for you all. So the iPad should work in terms of MathSpace, and functionality should be very, very close to the same as what you experience in using MathSpace on your Chromebook or your Mac. Or whatever platform you're currently accustomed to. The other thing that was mentioned in that particular question was things like Smart Notebook. Like I come from a school district that had Smart Notebook. I know there are apps out there that can kind of cast to your board. I think that's kind of what more this question is, but just know that you can use EquatIO Mobile. So notice I have my mobile out here, and I have a website that says, would you like to go to EquatIO Mobile? So just real quick, I'll show this since I have it written out, and I cheated just like Ryan. This is pretty cool though to show here, this active document. So it's saying, hey, Louis, we're looking for where you have EquatIO currently open. Remember when I opened that drawing? So here it is. It also finds this here. And real quick, I'll show you this. I'm going to go to the EquatIO mobile website, and I'm going to click on this document, and then I'm going to click on this camera. So take a look right here. I wrote out this chemical equation here. And I'm going to take a picture of this. And just like Ryan loves yield with heat, so do I, as you can tell. So check out that little chemical compound that I scribbled down on this piece of paper. And look how I can drag a capture box, much like Ryan was dragging a capture box around Khan Academy content earlier. And I can click, and I can save this as math or save it as an image. So I can use EquatIO Mobile to save that image right there that I have on paper, because this person is indicating in this question, it's easier to write it out. So I wrote it out just like this person asked, and watch how I can click here and insert that right into my Google Doc. So if you want to write out things, but yet submit them digitally in this remote learning environment, you're more than welcome to give EquatIO Mobile a try to be able to make math handwriting and make math digital either way. So I think the important thing is that you can still do, you can still do handwritten items, but then still submit the work digitally, which would be required in this type of environment that we're all currently learning in. So that's pretty much going to conclude. Ryan, anything to add to that before we call it? Good, yeah. All right, cool. So just want to thank you all for joining us again today. We appreciate you guys watching this, and we encourage you to continue to ask questions into our social media department. And we are fortunate to have you all, like I said, join us, ask questions, and we are more than happy to continue this if you so desire. So again, this is Ryan on the other end from the UK, and I am Louis from Central Florida, and we are signing off. Thanks very much, guys.
See you later, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.